that came back in no time. That wasn't meant to happen. That stopped real quick. Oh, what happened with my camera? Gosh. Sorry, things got a little out of hand there, out of nowhere. Oh, I think I need to reset. One sec. I think my camera's a little funky. Auto. There we go. That's happier. Now I look a little more normal. Let's readjust that a bit more. We should be good to go. Hey, Jay. Hey, Nick. Good to see you all there. Still don't quite have the right adjustment. That's a little better. Okay. Now I feel like we're a little more normal here. As normal as it ever gets. Hey, Klonoa. So yeah, we're going to talk about this season's anime. That's interesting. I wonder why. Let me try something. Do I have... I need a little while for the YouTube to pop in. Yeah. It'll take a little while. That's fine. So how are you all this week? What's been up with you, anime and such wise, in recent time periods? Pull out the microphone a little bit. But yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about this season's anime. It'll all be episode ones. I've not gotten a chance to go any deeper into any of those no's. Clocks have gone back in the UK. I did not realize that the UK had its own daylight savings time. That's good to know. That sucks. I think we'll be starting our daylight savings time soon, though, so that should switch over. So I think next week, but by next week, it will be switched. Let me just check. Yeah, our daylight savings time will switch over on Sunday, so that should only be an issue for us for the next couple of days. But thanks for letting me know. It's good to know. So yeah, it should be a fun night talking about anime, as usual. Hopefully I won't cough too much. I'm still getting over this Peruvian death flu that I got like 2 weeks ago, which was very annoying, but seems to be receding, more or less. I've also been working on the footage from Anime USA. I've got a bunch of footage on here from various panels and interviews with voice actors and experts and such, so I've started going through that and rendering it up, and hopefully those will go up on the channel in the next week or two. Watching Irozuka Sekai no Ashtakara. I'm not familiar with that one. Is there an English version of that title? Irodoku, The World in Colors. Minuscule amount of magic remains in everyday life. A 17-year-old witch descendant lost her sense of color at a very young age. She's sent back in time to 2018. That's interesting. That's a neat concept. Animator Expo. Nice. Yep. Animator Expo is always worth digging into. I don't think I'm actually entirely caught up on Animator Expo. I think I've watched the first, like, 3, seasons of that. Bloom Into You. Not sure which one that is. Bloom Into You. Oh, gosh. That looks familiar. I think I haven't gotten a chance to see that one yet. I think that was Licensed by Sentai. Is it not on Crunchyroll, or did it premiere on Crunchyroll late? That might be it. For some reason, I just didn't catch that one. Oh, microphone is low, you say. Let's try that. You're right. The microphone was set to low. That's weird. Let me crank it all the way up. That's maybe a bit much. Let's do there. So that should be more audible. Incarnated as slime. That's yep. That is glad to hear that's fun. I've got a couple of volumes of that. In fact, let me grab that. Get to see my sweatpants. Ooh. Guys, it's rare that I actually have the manga for an anime that I'm going to talk about, so it's nice to have that. Cool. Good to hear about audio being better. Cool. I may have to check out Bloom Into You then. It was like a shoujo romance Yuri kind of thing, apparently. Interesting. Yeah, I'm hoping maybe over the weekend I'll catch up on all the episodes I didn't get a chance to check out. Well, I'm sure there are already hentai parodies of the slime one. Why not? Especially given some of the stuff that happens later on, which is like not hentai, but like you can certainly go somewhere with it. That is the reality of such things. Rule 34 and all that. Boarding School Juliet. Boarding School Juliet. Oh, come on. Let's see. Black Dogs and White Cats. Interesting. It's in shonen magazines, but it sure looks shoujo based on the cover. Interesting. Huh. May dig into that one too. Oh, you're actually fan subbing. That's cool. Like, are you actually doing the fan subbing yourself? What do you mean stopping production of what on Gridman? I believe they're still making Gridman, so not quite sure what you're talking about there. Yeah, I downloaded some fan subbing software back in the day, but I never, learned enough of Japanese and such to actually, do the fan subbing. So, sort of a shonen romance thing. Yeah, I'm curious about what's going on there. I actually just read an article about an interview with the makers of Gridman. I didn't realize it was based on an old, 20-year-old, 15-year-old tokusatsu show. Oh, that's really cool, Kanoa. Just shifting around the subs so they match closer. Good for you. Nice. Never even thought of that. It's a good idea. All right. So I think I will switch over into the season preview, and we'll start digging into that. I will do my best to keep an eye on the chat as we go. Obviously, I'll be going pretty quickly, but if you guys want to throw in any thoughts on some of these shows, I'll be glad to throw it in. Oh, interesting. Farewell Yamato is the precursor to be invoked. Huh. I've not seen Farewell Yamato. I'll have to dig into that. That's really interesting. Huh. One of these days, I wouldn't mind getting all the way through Yamato. It's just so cheesy. That is fascinating. I hadn't thought that there might be something that has that kind of same tone. I'll not be reviewing the new Yu Yu Hakusho OVAs because shonen. I'm pulling up that article now. Interesting. Interesting. I had not heard about that. Huh. That's weird. It seems, I mean, that certainly seems like um, a lawyer getting in there. Hmm. That's interesting. But yeah, I've not reviewed Yu Yu Hakusho in the past. I've never gotten that deep into the show, so I don't know enough about it to review it. It just doesn't make sense. And obviously, my camera is getting all annoyed again with focus. So let me do that and just fix it. So it's just going to stay there. That's going to be the easiest way of handling that. Every so often, a lawyer comes out and says, no more license, no more fan works. And then people complain and then it comes back. So probably just one of those weird things that just is, was the lawyer thing of the week. All right, let's dig in, shall we? Oh, I need to switch over to that panel so I can actually do the thing. All right. Welcome everyone to my mini reviews of all the anime coming out this season in fall of 2018. It's actually not all of the anime coming out. This is just the shows that I was able to catch. First episodes only, so I can't talk about stuff that happens later. This is just what I thought of the first episodes of each of these shows. Let's dig into it now, starting with Anime Yell. This is a cute little series about a bunch of schoolgirls who are getting into cheerleading. Obviously, it's a very light, fluffy show. I certainly enjoyed it. I thought it was, nothing deep, nothing complicated, but managed to hit just the right notes in terms of being a cheerful show. Nice, bright colors, very traditional anime stuff, right? So I enjoyed it a lot. Not a show that I'm going to be following very closely, but a relaxing kind of a thing. Similarly, kind of was as Miss Beelzebub Likes It, anime series set in hell. That's actually what hell looks like, if you didn't know, where everyone is pretty and or bishonen, and the main character is this guy here. You can kind of see him, who is the sort of chief assistant to Satan, Beelzebub, who is this cute girl here, who kind of does her stuff pretty well, but is otherwise something of a lazy girl who just likes to lounge around in bed naked. So there's some fan service in it. There's a little bit of romance aspect to it. It's fun. It's very much meant to be relaxing and just easy to look at. Very soft color palette in it, which I rather liked. Like the other one, nothing really complex or deep, but something that you'll probably just kind of relax to and enjoy. And just kind of fun in that sense. Then there's Bakumatsu. I'll be honest, I can't remember that much about Bakumatsu when I think back on it. It is a shonen series set in the Bakumatsu with various characters around the opening of Japan to the West, telling that story from the perspective of the rebels. So basically there was a conflict between the traditional hierarchy and rebels who wanted to fend off the foreigners and keep Japan closed. And so this is a story from those rebels' perspective, which is a little more unusual. Usually it's more about the Shinsengumi, the big police, basically, of the time, the special police. As you can see, it has a nice kind of modern anime feel to it, although a little bit more of a throwback to anime of the past, a little Wolf's Rain-ish, actually. Animation, pretty much everything about it was pretty good down the road in terms of being decent art, or decent animation quality. The character design seemed to meld pretty well. Voice acting seemed fine, but nothing really caused it to blow up. Nothing really blew me away about the show. So if you're into that kind of thing, and certainly Bishonen characters, I think you will find this a fun ride. Between the Sea and the Sky was one of the big surprises for me of the season. It starts coming across as this relaxing slice of life show, and then expands into this massive sci-fi epic kind of a story while also remaining very goofy. So it's trying to hit a lot of different tones at once. Cute girl characters, basically being fishers in space. The setting, which is this future where all marine life has to exist off-world, is hard to believe and hard to follow along with in terms of the setup. But I don't think you're really there for the setting. You're more there for cute girls in underwater submarines trying to fish and prove themselves against the predominantly male fishing population. This is actually still a real thing in Japan, is that fishermen are overwhelmingly male, and it's just very unusual for women to get into that particular profession for a variety of reasons. So it's kind of playing off that thing still in Japanese culture. So interesting, but just definitely weird. Definitely a weird premise and weird characters, but no complaints. Then there's Conception, which comes in and kind of tries to shock you. It starts with the main character and his girlfriend. The girlfriend confesses that she's pregnant. Then they're whisked off to a fantasy world where it turns out that pregnancy is a thing. What's weird about Conception is I believe it's based on a visual novel, or at least a video game, where the main character has to basically breed children with various girls, but it's not like what that actually is for us in real life. And so then those children that are created then grow up and become heroes. So it's this very weird video gamey premise, because he eventually apparently he builds this harem of girls who he conceives with, but again, it's not that kind of conception apparently. It's odd. So there's a hentai feel to it, but no actual hentai. The art is actually the animation is actually above average. Some of the action animation here is really lovely, and I really like the character designs, oddly enough, but it's a weird one. It's just a bizarre premise. Obviously trying to be sexy, but it can't be too sexy for prime time. So one of those shows that I think will find its audience, but it's never really going to break out probably and become a massive hit because it's just so strange. So I enjoyed it. Again, probably not going to follow it too closely. Then here's one of the more problematic ones of the season, Dakaichi, a more serious adult manga about a male model who is about a male model who is facing off against and trying to beat another very successful male model. But I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there are some homosexual overtones in this. Homosexuality is a very strong element in this manga, and at least in episode 1, some of it's not consensual. It's kind of creepy, and I had a difficult time with it because it felt like it's okay because they're gay. And there's an aspect of it that just left me feeling very uncomfortable. Not because they're gay, but because there is some non-consensuality elements to it, which seem to be very much glossed over in the story as just, well, that's just what he's like. I'm not crazy about that. So I found that very problematic. Interestingly, though, it is trying to clearly be a much more adult kind of a storyline, in the sense that it's about grown-ups being grown-ups with each other. There is some over-the-top animation to it, but it is much more about everyday work and maintaining your work life and your personal life and those aspects. So interesting to see something that's much more in the seinen aspect of things, but it's just it creeped me out too much for me to certainly follow it much more beyond that. Then there's Double Decker, which is a sci-fi fantasy action anime. I believe it's all CGI, or at least CGI animation stuff. And there's another show where I couldn't tell you much of anything that happens in this episode. Characters come together, there's action and fighting, and that's pretty much it. Again, it was enjoyable, it was fun. I wouldn't, recommend folks not watch it, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend folks watch it either. It just there's nothing really to latch on to for me for Double Decker. Seems like one of those every season has a few action shows, which are just entertaining, but probably aren't going to remain with you for the rest of your life, right? And that's fine. It's just, it fits into that category. Now we're going to move on, because we're going alphabetically, to Goblin Slayer. This was the one that's caused a lot of attention and a lot of people talking online about it, because, and this is where I have to get into some spoilers for the episode, so kind of plug your ears for a little while. Goblin Slayer is about a group of characters in a fantasy world, and it's very much more of a D&D fantasy world rather than an MMO world, or a video game world, who decide to go into a place and go into a place that's been overrun by goblins and fight off the goblins, and they fail. The goblins proceed to kill the males and rip the clothes off the girls and have their way with them. So what's shocking about this is the fact that it's treated very realistic and grittily, right? A character gets stabbed in the stomach and doesn't just, grunt and fall over and die, starts screaming and falling over and trying to do something about it. And then others come in with daggers, and it is obviously horrendously painful to be stabbed in the stomach. It's that kind of stuff that is kind of, it is meant to be like, no, this is not, something kills you and then you de-res. It's dark. And then it starts dealing with why the goblins are doing this. It is meant to be clearly very much about a much more bestial society than ours is. And that does come across as problematic to some people. A friend of mine called this show problematic with a capital P, partly because there is sexual violence against female characters in the show. But importantly, that is treated as horrific. Like, there's no fan service in this episode. It is very much about the fact that is a horrific thing to do, and we're going to investigate, why those characters do it and what's going on, why someone would do that. So I'm intrigued by Goblin Slayer. It is certainly very mature. It's certainly not for kids. Very, very hard. It's uncomfortable. It is deeply uncomfortable multiple times in the first episode, but I think that makes it interesting. So I'll be interested to see where it goes. But that's a tough one. Moving on to Himote House, which is kind of the exact opposite of Himote House. So the thing about Himote House is that it is, again, an all CGI show, very nicely animated, no complaints about the CGI in here, about a group of girls all living in a house together. It comes across as a very light, fluffy show about a group of girls just, all living together, until you get to the end of the episode, and I won't reveal what that is, but it kind of takes a turn at the end of the episode. Not like, dark death or anything, but there is a twist, which was kind of interesting at the end. And it feels like the kind of show where they're probably adapting a 4-koma or a web manga, and they're just having fun with it. They're just throwing jokes at the screen. The actors feel like they're having fun with the characters. And so it's, again, one of these light, fun shows that is easy to watch. They're also short episodes. And that I think would be a kind of a fun approach to a lot of these stories. So I enjoyed it. I would probably watch more of it. I wouldn't mind that at all. The CG animation is not incredibly lush, but definitely gets across what it needs to. No complaints. Moving on to Hinomaru Sumo. Now, you all probably know I'm not usually into shonen titles. And this is definitely shonen right down the line. It's about a group of characters who want to start a sumo club. And so, there are a lot of teenage boys wearing nothing but those sumo outfits in the show. The show does an interesting job of making sumo feel dramatic and interesting in the way that a good sports anime will, where you get drawn into the sport. They also don't shy away from how silly these guys look in these outfits, and they kind of celebrate that, and not in an over-the-top way, not in a way that is goofy, But I really actually appreciated the fact that they're like, yeah, this is the sport. This is just what this is, and you kind of have to get used to that to appreciate what it is. That's totally cool, I think. So, and they pack a lot into episode one, a lot of sort of backstory and setting up the characters, and it also has a pretty high animation budget, at least in terms of episode one. So yeah, as somebody who's done Inazuma myself, like I appreciate it intellectually. I was definitely sucked into that first episode. Again, one of those things certainly not for everyone, but they did a really good job of making it a show folks would enjoy. Jingai-san no Yome is about a boy who ends up engaged to a creature, a weird creature, this weird thing. It is clearly a light comedy, probably again based on a web manga or a 4-koma. It's again, it's one of those shows that is, the concept is so goofy that I ended up I didn't enjoy it very much. Partly because the humor is so, because the premise is so bizarre that the humor couldn't really work very well. It's either the main character reacting in shock to things happening, or it's kind of everyday life situations with a weird character. So unless you're really into, it's so random lol, I don't think it's going to be for many people, but it might be for that kind of person that's kind of throwing that in, right? That is just kind of looking for something that is just has a bizarre premise and is going to flow along with that. So interesting in that premise, but it just didn't really grab me very well. Same thing with Mercstoria. This is a fantasy series. Yeah, there's characters running around a fantasy world. I'm sure there's stuff happening in the first episode, but darn if I can remember any of it. It just it flowed right past me. And I say it as somebody who remembers a lot of anime, but that one just felt very generic to me. Again, not in a terrible way, but just okay, that's a nice fun thing, but whatever. Now let's move on to Miss Vampire Who Lives in My Neighborhood. I'd heard about this one before it came out. Basic premise is that this girl discovers that there's this vampire girl who lives near her and ends up hanging out with her. And it's very much a sort of slice of life comedy. And I was surprised at how much I got invested in the story, partly because the staff do a really good job at pacing and at revealing a little bit of character and at building the relationship of these characters over the course of the first episode, to where I understood where the characters were coming from and the comedy landed. It's easy for this, in this sort of situation, where it's a vampire girl and you're kind of living with a vampire girl, or not living with necessarily, but you're hanging out with her a lot. It's easy for that to turn into obvious jokes or just random jokes. And these are more situational. This felt like a well thought out introduction to these characters and this premise, which I certainly enjoyed. I think it's one of those shows where, again, if you like comedy with an odd twist, I think this definitely fits in that in that situation. So yeah, to me, Miss Vampire is one of those shows where, like, yeah, I can see myself watching more of that. Not massively high priority, but lovely. Nice animation quality. Again, nothing that really blew me out of the water in terms of all those aspects, but no problems there. Speaking of problematic, My Sister, My Writer. This is clearly trying to be, or I think this is trying to be the I Can't Believe My Little Sister Is This Cute kind of a show of this season. Main character writes novels, light novels, discovers that his little sister has written a novel. She is always badgering him, and then he finds out that the novel she's written has won an award, and she wants him to kind of be her, her physical face to people. She can't admit that she actually wrote this novel because the novel's about a little girl who has a crush on her older brother. So incest, yay! Now they don't go too far with it in episode 1. It appears to be more that just she has the real girl has a, I don't know, she really likes her older brother, but there doesn't need to be anything physical about it. But it's hard to see. it's hard to see where they're going with it. It's one of those shows that could get creepy really quickly, or they could dial it back and it could be more of a fun series. What I was hoping is this would be a show about a guy and a girl who are both capitalizing on this whole incest thing and write novels that are unexpectedly successful and then have to deal with the fact that everyone assumes that they have those feelings for each other and that they don't, but they care about each other. And you have to kind of sort through the fact that, caring about somebody doesn't mean that you're physically attracted to them. So that was a tack I was hoping they're going to take. It's unclear from episode 1. They didn't go too hardcore in one direction or the other, so we'll see. I love the character designs. I love the overall tone and feel of the show. Nice animation budget, traditional kind of color schemes. But yeah, I really liked that idea. I liked the premise and where it might have gone, and I like the various elements of it, but it might get really creepy. So who knows? What we see a lot. Radiant, another shonen series, fantasy shonen series, in the excuse me, in the overall mode of like a fairy tale, or maybe even a Yu Yu Hakusho. Young man is an apprentice magician, trying to use magic to save the world. People don't really like magicians or mages, whatever, because they tend to cause devastation, even though they're trying to save people. So it's about fighting back against prejudice, basically. I typically don't like shonen. This again did a good job of establishing characters and creating a situation that made sense. I think one of the big problems is that the protagonist is a very by the books shonen protagonist and hasn't shown a lot to make him different. One of those elements where it's I don't know, where I really like the world, the fantasy world they set up, where it's hitting this sort of middle ground between completely generic medieval fantasy and kind of weirdness. I like the characters, but the protagonist was just he's just so bland. When I say bland, he's generic. He's a character who's always jumping into danger no matter what's happening, always trying to protect people, but there's just nothing beyond that. So I'm hoping they develop it somewhere. Pretty high animation budget, and yeah, there's definitely something there, some core there, and probably one of those shows where once you get a little ways into it, it really starts to pick up and get interesting. But as of episode 1, it wasn't enough there for me to really get excited. So if you like shonen fantasy series, definitely something to look for. One of the weirder named shows of the season, Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. A friend of mine described this as a Monogatari series without the flashing text on the screen all the time. So if you've ever wondered if a show like that would be that interesting without that visuals flair, you can get the sense of it here. The image looks very sexy and ridiculous. The premise is that this girl is slowly turning basically invisible. People aren't noticing her at all, and she can walk right by somebody and wave their hand in their face, and they won't even see that she's there. And so she started doing increasingly ridiculous stuff to see if people will notice her. And she comes across this guy who does notice her, and they start talking about basically depression and desires to feel noticed and to feel important. I found this show really interesting, and it's a good example of how I think anime fandom tends to divide, where I like shows that explore these various things, even if it's not got a lot of action, even if it's not visually impressive. I find these themes interesting enough that I really wanted to dig into it. Nick Owens is saying he had a bit of a Haruhi Suzumiya vibe, and I agree. There are shades of Haruhi to this. Certainly not in very overt ways, but in that sense of subtly parodying certain aspects of anime, delving into certain aspects of growing up and responsibility and starting to see things outside of yourself and starting to grow up in adolescence. So I think, and of course there's a bunny girl outfit, which is yeah, but that goes back decades. So yeah, this is a show I think that is more for the thinking otaku. uh, and it's not going to be even for all the thinking otaku because there is a lot of just it's a slow series, but I thought it was fascinating. I also appreciated the more muted color palette, the fact that it's a little darker, and the fact that it's not trying to be your typical anime in every respect. So intriguing. Definitely something that caught my eye. Now I got to talk a bit about Rewrite It. And again, this is based only on episode 1. So this is the most recent anime series, character designed and conceived by Yoshitoshi Abe, the character designer behind Serial Experiments Lain, Nia Under 7, and Technolize. And I need to sort of give some background to this because there was a preview of this that was reported on Anime News Network, and the reviewer trashed it. Just really kind of hated this show. Turns out the reviewer is a massive fan of Abe and really wanted this show to be more than it is. I found Rewrite It to be a very interesting premise, with characters and an unusual premise, with characters set in a very interesting sort of situation. I like that it is about adults. It's about characters who are faced with an unusual situation and are trying to find a way out of that in a non-typical shonen way, right? Or non-typical anime series way, where they're not just going to push through and, fight off the bad guy. It feels more like adults or, characters close to adults dealing with these interesting aspects of this unusual situation. The character designs don't look much at all like Abe. They've been kind of genericized down to a very normal anime style. Well, that's okay. Disappointing, but that's fine. We can live. We can chill. But I think there's something there. I think there's a lot about Rewrite It that can go in interesting directions. I think it's certainly not going to be one of these blow your mind shows for every single episode, but I'm willing to give it a chance, and there's certainly enough there to pull me in and make me curious about what's going to happen next, which is really all I ask of most anime. So I think if you've heard of Rewrite It and kind of written it off, give it a try. Give it a try. Moving on to one of the sports anime of the season, Run with the Wind, which is about a group of runners. So there's this very famous race in Japan that goes for hours and hours, a foot race, and it's like not just advertised. It is broadcast live on Japanese television every year. It's a huge thing. I think every 2 years. Massive thing. Excuse me. And Uzumate is coming up. And this is about a group of people who are going to try to run that race. And so it's clearly getting the team together, getting the gang together to figure out how to run the race. And there are the fairly typical set of anime characters in this, not in a negative sense, but in the sense that there's the prodigy who doesn't really want to do it, but really needs to. There's the person who's really, really into it. There's kind of the comic relief characters. All those pieces are there in a way that I think kind of works. And again, what I like about this, like the other one, is these are characters in college, I believe. And so it's not that typical high school insecurity thing. These are characters who are much more defined in who they are and where they want to go in life, and folding this into that, that approach to what they're going to do. They all happen to live in the same house, although not just happenstance. There's a whole thing behind that. But again, if you like sports anime, I think this is going to be pretty much what you're looking for. Unfortunately, one of the problems it's going to have, and I'll be curious to see for those who watch it if it has this problem, it's hard to make foot racing feel all that dramatic. It can be done, but we all know what the human body looks like in a tracksuit. So it can't really look very sexy. It can't really look very, over the top. Again, it can be done with certain ways of movement, but it's really hard to make that work over the course of 13, 26 episodes. So we'll have to see if folks remain engaged in this show, just based on the movement and the animation. Again, good animation budget, very realistic color palette, so not too bright, not too dark, not too soft. Interesting show on that. Again, one of those shows that I would not mind watching more of. I probably won't watch too much of, but kind of a fun one. Also a fun one, Skullface bookseller Honda-san. And this isn't quite what the show looks like, but it is it's a series about a bookseller who also happens to be a skeleton, and the various customers that come in. It is much more of instead of being about books, it's more about customers. What it's like working with people who come into your store and ask for ridiculous things. And I want a book. It's red. You know what that book is? It's the red book that you have. That kind of stuff. So I enjoy what I saw. It's short episodes, web-based, very silly, but clearly grounded in realistic situations. So that was one that I certainly enjoyed. Nothing deep that I could tell, but fun. A lot of ridiculous stuff. Then moving on to and I forget how it's supposed to be pronounced, but I'm going to call it SSSS Gridman, based on Tokusatsu show. Odd show. It's by Trigger, so expect all the traditional Triggerisms. I really like the first episode because it does the Tokusatsu thing in I want to say realistic way, in the sense that there's a big fight between like a giant basically guy in a rubber suit and a giant rubber monster kind of thing, and it devastates the city. Like it's like a disaster. It is a tremendously dangerous, destructive thing that this happens. But then there's this, understory of this kid who gets to fight as this, giant thing. And I really loved that approach to it. And Trigger seems to be taking a slightly different approach with Gridman, where it's not as it doesn't go over the top in as many different directions, if you will, as say Darling in the Franxx does, where Gridman feels like we're gonna go kind of absurdist with the Tokusatsu stuff, but everything else is gonna be a little more gritty and grounded. So curious to see where that goes. If nothing else, Trigger stuff is always beautiful to look at, so it might be worth just for that. Again, I enjoyed it. I like the approach to it. I like the overall color scheme, although it's pretty traditional anime stuff, Trigger anime stuff. But certainly again, if that's your bag, I think it will definitely fit that bag, if you will. Moving on to That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. This is a manga I've been reading for some months and greatly enjoying, and it's been adapted now into an anime series. From what I can tell, the anime is moving pretty quickly through the story of the manga, which is good. Basic idea is average Japanese salaryman he dies and is reincarnated as a slime in a fantasy world with some extra abilities that a normal slime wouldn't have. And then it's about how he learns about those abilities, how he figures out what to do. One of the reasons I like anime is because anime often brings novel solutions to traditional storytelling problems. One of the reasons I like Tenchi and Utena is that the way they told their stories revealed a lot without people having to sit down and explain to you through dialogue. Slime does this amazing thing where you get to see what it's like being born as a creature with no eyesight and no ears and no mouth. You're just a blob. So what's that like? What do you observe? Or what do you sense? How do you absorb things? What does that feel like? And then, moving on from there and growing and learning new things. If nothing else, Slime is impressive for its visual storytelling. What I like about Slime the manga, and again, so the first episode only gets up to basically him figuring things out and encountering one other creature down there where he is. So not too much. I mean, there's a lot that happens in that first episode, and there's a nice little thing at the end, by the way. But sort of a post credits bit. But what I like about this is that it is seeing how the slime reacts to things in the way a 40-year-old would. And that's, I think, one of the things that's really interesting is that, you know, he's reacting in a measured, intelligent way, but also somebody who has a new lease on life, where now he can do things he couldn't before. So he's absolutely embracing this and taking advantage of his newfound life. But he's not an idiot, right? He doesn't step in where angels fear to tread like so many shonen protagonists do. So it has this wonderful sense of not just maturity, but of someone thinking through the consequences of their actions and taking a strongly calculated risk, which I really, really liked. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think does a really good job of setting things up. I'm curious to see where it goes with some of its storylines. There's some stuff that happens later on in this manga that can that I found a little fan-servicey, unnecessarily fan-servicey. So I'm curious to see where they take that in the manga, or in the anime rather. But yeah, this is definitely one of the shows that I want to watch more of this season. Really enjoyed that one. Moving on to Ulysses Jeanne d'Arc. I actually rewatched some of this for this video, and yeah, it's a retelling of Joan of Arc with busty anime girls. Some of the characters I believe are switched around and changed, and there's some gender swapping I believe. When me and my friends watched it, we were like, oh, okay, that's you know, they're changing things around. Okay, yeah, that happened, and okay, oh, that's a fun moment. Okay. When it was over, we turned to each other and we were like, that was an entertaining use of 24 minutes. You know, we just really, it just didn't really come together for us much. And it's weird, there's nothing that it does wrong. The character designs are pretty generic. The storyline doesn't really they do a fair amount of story, but it doesn't really, you know, get too far in episode 1. So you can't blame it that much. The characters are pretty one-note as of episode 1. So, it just didn't really come together for us. I don't know. This might be one of those shows that has those slow first couple of episodes and then accelerates over time and really comes together. It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell on this one, but it just was there. One show that's definitely not there is Uza-Maid. Okay. So, this is one of those shows that is either going to be intensely creepy or just fun and goofy. Basically, it's got two characters, an adult woman and a little girl, like a 12-year-old girl. Or maybe she's 11 or 10 or 11, I guess. Probably more like preteen. The girl is going through some rough times, and she's gotten very, very precocious and very hard to manage by her single father. The woman has just gotten out of the military, and on her way home, she'd always look in, or not look in on, but she'd always walk by the house with this little girl and see her playing, and it always brought a smile to her face. And the girl hasn't been seen for a while. When this woman walks by the house again, she notices that they're looking for a maid, and she thinks, "Oh, that'd be great. This would be a chance for me to, hang around and be with that kid. That'd be great." She seemed awesome, and she goes in, and turns out that the kid is kind of a holy terror, an unholy terror at this point. And she has no problem with this because she's ex-military, and anything this kid can throw at her, she has no problem with throwing right back at her. But she also is really enamored with this girl. Now, I say enamored. There does not appear to be any physical attraction. There's no creepy, lowly stuff going on here. But there is that thing where she's just, she thinks this girl's the cutest thing in the world, and wants to do nothing more than spend all of her time with her. So it straddles that line where there are aspects of it that can really feel creepy, but it never quite crosses over that line to where she's doing anything really, really, disturbing. We might go there in later episodes. The thing about Uza-Maid is it has a very high animation budget. There's some, really well animated sequences in this first episode. They really lavish a lot of time on the girl, and and her running around and being, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and again, it's like people who think dogs are really cute, and so pick them up and hug them and do all and cuddle them, that kind of stuff. Where there's no physical attraction there, but they just want to do that with this kid. It's that kind of a thing thus far in the show. So I found it to be really cute. I found it to be I found the premise to be really fun, where this girl is just trying to piss off this maid in very childlike ways, and the maid is just no problem, like it just bounces right off her. I also appreciate the fact that the girl is very much played like a child. She's not precocious in the way that she's, she can be devious, but it's very childlike deviousness. And on the other hand, she does have a complex emotional life, right? She is not just a simple being, right? That is acting entirely on stimulus. So I did a good job. I think they did a good job with all those things. It does. We've been so conditioned by so many of these weird shows, and I'm like, this could go in a really creepy direction, and I'm waiting for it to happen. So who knows? Can't tell. We'll see. Maybe I don't know. All right, moving on to some of the last shows on the list. Swanyan, I'm sure I'm pronouncing this really wrong. Swanyan Sword Luminary, which is a big sweeping epic tale. It is a collaboration between a Japanese and I believe a Taiwanese animation studio trying to tell a Chinese style epic story. So generals and armies and there's a guy taken as a slave to a court, and then he becomes kind of an engineer type, and there's lots of big stuff going on. We found this really enjoyable. It's a big kind of a show. There's a lot of characters, a lot of plot, and it came across like they're trying to accomplish a lot with the show. Animation budget is high-ish in the sense that, again, it feels like a big show, and they're not going to have the budget to really show, armies of millions like that you kind of want to in a big epic, but they're pushing that as best they can. I was pretty impressed. This is a show that I would like to watch more of, but I am kind of a sucker for those big epic kind of stories that really feel like big epics, and I just like the fact that it's fantasy, but more like Chinese fantasy, and that kind of stuff. So I kind of really enjoyed and really found that interesting. Definitely a different kind of a show. Moving on to Zombieland Saga, one of the other shows that folks really got into this season. And again, I got to do spoilers here for episode 1 because that's the only way to explain this show. So plug your ears if you don't want to hear spoilers, but there's no other way for me to explain this. Basically, the main girl is a bubbly teenage girl who is quickly turned into a zombie. And then it is explained to her that she has to that she is going to be part of an all-zombie girl idol group. And they're going to get on stage and, perform as zombies, as an idol group. So it is clearly a parody of idol culture, of idol anime shows, Love Live and Idol Master and all those things. But it seems to be a fairly loving parody in that, excuse me. Yeah, it's having fun with the thing, and it is poking holes in some of the various aspects of that industry, which can be very creepy at times and very ridiculous. So, but it's doing that in a way that isn't nasty, isn't mean. It's just kind of having fun with the concept and throwing that around. It also helps that the character designs are very cute. It's very easy on the eyes and fun to watch. Also, importantly, it is very, very carefully paced humor, where when they're trying to make a joke about horror, it's paced like horror. When they're trying to do lighthearted comedy, it's paced that way. Jokes have the time to land, or they move very quickly, and they kind of build things up over the course of an episode. So there's an attention to detail here and a level of care that I find really refreshing, and I found it was really fun. When I've shown this to other fans, they've just adored it. So this is definitely one of the one of the more breakout shows of the season. One of the shows that I think you can show to a lot of anime fans, and they'll get it and they'll enjoy it. This is a great one for us to end up. I'm sorry, this was a great show for us to end up on when we were watching this stuff, and I'm glad we're ending it on here for this particular season preview. So those are the anime I watched this season. I hope you found that useful, and I know this isn't everything, obviously, but there's a lot of fun shows this season, which is always a nice thing. I'm glad to see that. So hope you found that useful, and hope you find some new favorite anime. Jay, which anime was based on puppeteering and puppets? I cannot talk tonight. Thank you, Game Escape. Luminary. Gotcha. Huh. That makes sense. Could very well be. Definitely not for everyone. Definitely its own kind of thing. I have not seen Legendary Heroes. No. Just looking it up now. Came out in 2010. Yeah, that was right when I was not watching that much anime. I kind of hit a dip in my stuff. That is awesome, Clonella. Good for you, though. I think more people deserve to know the credits of people actually who made the anime. Like, those names are important, right? The person who animated that thing. It all matters. 1 second, I need to grab some tissues. Ugh, being sick sucks. Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. Yeah, End of Viva. Yeah. End of Viva was a huge undertaking. And everyone knew about it, and it was a Evangelion itself was such a cultural phenomenon. Everyone knew that movie was coming out. Everyone knew it would be huge. It was like, it was like a Star Wars movie, right? Like the profile is so high, you can just get anyone to work on it. of course, it helped that Anno had contacts in the industry, that he had, worked with Miyazaki, or at least worked on Nausicaa. I've always wondered how closely, if at all, he and Miyazaki worked on Nausicaa. I know he basically did that. Did that scene with the God Warrior. I'm sorry, I know that Anno basically directed the scene with the God Warrior. Did the animation production on that. I wonder if that wasn't, was it just Miyazaki saying, "Here are the storyboards, go off and draw," or what? Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I read, and I may be wrong about this. Let me pull that off, actually, 1 second. It's funny because people thought that the drawings in the kindergarten were some deep thing, and they just went to a kindergarten and said, "Hey, can we just get some kids drawing for this thing we're doing?" They said, "Sure, here." Like it was just calling up a nearby kindergarten and saying, or walking over and saying, "Hey, we're doing an anime. We need some crayon drawings." It wasn't like they went through and, "Ooh, we're gonna select this one for that," and select no, there you go. I'm sure once they got the drawings, they looked at them, but people tend to give people tend to. My one pet peeve about Evangelion, and it's more about Evangelion fandom, is that they tend to think that every line in Evangelion is part of some grand master plan, and it's just chill out a little bit. There's some neat stuff there. Evangelion is an impressive piece of work, but it is not the. One of the times I get one of my biggest laughs in my panels is when I say, and I'm of an age when fans would say Neon Genesis Evangelion is the greatest work of art ever made by mankind. And people laugh because it's like, yep, that's what people say. That is kind of the opinion there. But it's like, it's an amazing piece of work. Just temper, temper your enthusiasm a little bit. Your expectations, really. And that's part of the problem. It's not that I'm be passionate, but understand that things are made by humans with limitations, and not everything is not everything fits together in this big whole theme of things. Yeah, I'm not saying you do you are, Jay. It's just it is funny. One of these days I'll finish Evangelion. I've seen the beginning and the end of the show, but never the entire show. Of course, I've seen so many music videos and clips and so forth. I feel like I've seen all of it. I've seen practically every moment of the TV show. It feels like at this point, you just can't get away from it. But that's okay. That's life. All right. All right. Just double checking. So yeah, I've got some stuff. Actually, you know what I might do? Can I? So I need to pull that up. See if I can do that. Media. Let's see if this works. I'm going to try something real quick. I'm going to show you a little preview. Yeah. Of a video I'm working on right now. Actually, just got finished with. This will be going up on the YouTube channel in a little bit. See if this works.
In the past, people would ask me if there was a character that I identified the
Apparently not. I'd be curious. Everything I've seen about the rebuilds makes me love them far more than the TV series. I will say that. Yeah, for me, the rebuilds have been everything I wanted out of the TV show, and removing everything that I didn't like about it. So that's interesting that didn't work. Why not? Oh, come on, Klonoa. Just buy it. Don't force don't encourage people to pirate something you can easily get on Amazon. Doesn't matter whether it's licensed or not. You can get, you know, you can get it. You can find it. You can find it legally. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. So why wouldn't that play? Let me see here. Maybe. That's that. Oh, I can do it that way. Let's try it this way. Where is it? Video. There it is. Okay, let's try this.
You know, in the past, people would ask me if there was a character that I identified the most with, and I would usually say that the characters that I play are different aspects of my psyche, right? Like each character is evoking out of the galaxy of Crispin, you know, a different aspect of me, and so it's about what part of me rises up to meet that character. But recently, having worked on Overwatch, I have a special affinity for Winston that is really close to my heart. People have asked sometimes in different panels, especially like Overwatch panels or game things, they say, oh, if there's any other game in Overwatch that you'd want to play, who would it be? I'm like, nobody. I just want Winston. I mean, if you lined up all the different Overwatch characters as a Crispin, you can choose whatever character you want. It would be Winston every time. So yeah, I'm sort of attached to him right now. I think the reason I'm so attached to Winston is because of his indefatigable optimism. He is a gorilla from the moon, and sometimes I often feel like a bit of a space elf myself. Maybe someday I'll play one on TV. But so there's often this sort of position of idealism that I look at humanity from the position of, say, the moon, and say, oh, humanity has all these really great principles, these ideas of fair play and justice and morality and everything. Wouldn't it be great if we lived up to those principles? Guys, we're gonna live up to the principle? We're not. We don't? Well, why not? And there's this sort of shock in my own psyche. I mean, I remember even as a little kid, be like we don't live up to the better angels of our nature? Well, why not? You know? And that sort of striving for that ideal and being completely unwilling to let go of it, deciding that there is a certain standard that must be met, and anything below that is just completely unacceptable. And so that, I think, is why I identify with Winston so much, because that's where he lives. He just, even if he has to be alone in his garage tinkering with his toys, he is not going to let this go. Like, he just refuses to sort of throw in the towel on this. And that is very compelling to me.
So I did not realize that it's out of print, but yeah, it's easy to find legitimate copies of it. You know, either Amazon used copies or eBay. A lot of figurines on eBay. Wow, is that a... Wow, there's even a Dojin. a sexy dojin. Funnily enough, that's interesting. Huh. I'm pretty sure that's a hentai dojin. And they seem to put a little card on the adults only thing on it, I assume. I think there's a little bit of card on the corner. And there's nothing in this mentioning that it's hentai. That's weird. Well, yeah, and I mean, $100, $200 is what you're going to spend on Amazon too. But that's, welcome to being an anime fan. Okay. I am starting to, yeah, it's an expensive hobby. Exactly. That is a reality of things. All right. Yeah, it'll be a good thing to stream. Or check it out at a con. Next time you go to a con, there's a good chance Eva will stream somewhere. Or find a friend to, show it to you. Find somebody who has a copy. That's how we always used to do back in the day. We'd ask our friends to share copies back and forth. Always a possibility. All right. That will do it for us for tonight. I'm starting to close down here. So thank you all very much for joining me. Tomorrow, we'll be watching Aria the Animation on Anime Club. So hop in the Discord if you haven't already. And around 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Eastern time, I will go ahead and start streaming that on Rabbit, and then we'll go live and talk about the first 4 episodes of Aria the Animation, one of the original slice of life anime, at least in terms of popularizing the genre. So looking forward to that. And apologies for not being around this week. My cold has just killed me on Monday through Wednesday, but I seem to be able to at least do some bursts, which is nice. So thank you all so much for being around. As always, appreciate it. Always fun talking to you all. And yeah, we should be back in the regular schedule. So yeah, thank you all very much. Have a good week. See ya.